The sea had gone quiet. Even the gentle hum of jellyfish passing through the water had softened into a low, soothing murmur. In his pineapple house, SpongeBob stood in front of his round porthole window, brushing his teeth with slow, sleepy circles. Each motion was less about cleaning now and more about rhythm, a small ritual that told his body it was time to rest. Behind him, the house creaked softly, like it too was settling in for the night. The faint bubbles that drifted up from the kitchen sink shimmered in the dim blue glow of his nightlight. Somewhere in the corner, Gary let out a slow, satisfied mew, curling his shell a little tighter. SpongeBob looked at his reflection in the round glass, toothpaste foam still around his lips. His eyes were drooping, not from tiredness exactly, but from peace. It had been a simple day, the kind he liked best. A few jellyfish caught and released. A batch of perfectly golden Krabby Patties. A visit from Patrick that turned into an hour of quiet cloud watching. There was no noise left to chase, no plans left to make, just sleep. He rinsed his mouth, turned off the light, and shuffled toward his bed, that soft, square mattress with the anchor-patterned sheets. His alarm clock sat on the nightstand, round and shiny, ticking faithfully beside a small seashell lamp. Normally, SpongeBob would tap the top once, smile at the familiar tick, 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 and whisper, "Wake me up at 6, buddy. We got work to do." But tonight, something about the stillness felt different. The clock ticked slower than usual, almost drowsy, almost sleepy. He yawned, eyes half closed, and mumbled, "Don't worry, Clocky. You can rest too." He didn't mean it, not really, but the words floated through the room like bubbles, soft and round, and for a moment it sounded like the clock sighed back. The second hand twitched once, hesitated, and settled. Tick, tock, tick. Then nothing. The silence stretched wide and gentle. It wasn't the kind of silence that made you lonely. It was full of the ocean's quiet pulse, the warmth of home, the faint hum of something deeply still. SpongeBob slid under his blanket, pulling it up to his chin. His eyes watched the moonlight swim lazily across the ceiling, distorted by the waves above. He thought he saw shapes in it, the outline of a jellyfish, the flicker of his spatula, the smiling face of Patrick. But the shapes faded before he could tell. "Good night, Gary," he whispered. Gary blinked, already half asleep. His eyes lowered one at a time until only the sound of his gentle breathing filled the room. From outside, the sea whispered against the walls, a soft rhythm, like breathing. The kelp fronds rustled against the coral fence. Somewhere in the distance, the faint bell of a drifting ship rang once, then again, fainter. And inside the pineapple house, the clock's hands rested still, as if even time itself had decided to take a nap. For a moment, SpongeBob's dreams began before he even fell asleep. He could almost see himself walking across an empty Bikini Bottom street. The lights dim, the sand roads glowing faintly blue. No one was awake, not even the Chum Bucket's neon sign. The silence wrapped around everything like a blanket. He thought, maybe mornings can wait. The ocean agreed. A current drifted gently past his window, carrying a trail of slow, glowing plankton. The light painted faint silver waves across the room, over SpongeBob's cheek, over Gary's shell, over the still clock that had forgotten its duty. And as the light pulsed softer and slower, SpongeBob's breathing matched it, in perfect rhythm with the sea. Tick-on, talk-on, silence. The night was full, but empty of movement, the kind of stillness that comes once in a long while when even the sea remembers to rest. SpongeBob smiled faintly, still awake but drifting. His thoughts became smaller, rounder, like bubbles rising toward the ceiling until they vanished. He wondered what kind of dreams a clock might have if it could. Maybe it dreamed of time flowing backward, of mornings repeating, of the same golden sunrise again and again. Or maybe it dreamed of nothing at all. In the hush of the night, even those thoughts slipped away. The sea exhaled, the light dimmed, the clock slept. And in his bed, beneath the moonlit water, SpongeBob drifted quietly into dreams where the next morning was still miles away. The first thing SpongeBob noticed in his dream was how quiet everything was. No sizzling from the Krusty Krab grill. No chatter from the customers. Not even the soft whoosh of jellyfish in the distance. Yeah, it was the kind of quiet that feels round and heavy, like a seashell pressed against your ear, full of sound that hasn't quite begun yet. SpongeBob stood in the middle of jellyfish fields, barefoot on the soft seagrass. The colors around him looked different, softer, paler. The sky above shimmered with an impossible glow, like morning and night had forgotten whose turn it was. He looked down and realized he was still wearing his pajamas, the same ones with the blue anchors and little bubbles printed along the sleeves. His hat was slightly askew, as if it had followed him from bed to dream without asking permission. He murmured, rubbing one eye. Guess I overslept. But the world didn't seem to mind. The jellyfish were sleeping too, suspended mid-drift, their tendrils glowing faintly into the dim light. The corals were still, the flowers motionless. Even the tide had stopped moving. It was as if the entire ocean had decided to join him, just for one night, in forgetting the morning. He took a step forward, and the grass beneath his feet gave a soft puff of bubbles. It felt lighter than usual, almost like walking on clouds. He giggled quietly to himself. Well, this isn't too bad. In the distance, he saw the outline of his pineapple house glowing faintly golden, as if lit from within by a memory of sunlight. He could see the curve of the window, the shape of his bed, and even Gary's shell glinting on the nightstand. But it was strange he was inside the dream, and the dream was watching him back. He reached out to touch the air, and it rippled gently like warm water. "Hello?" he whispered. Only the bubbles answered, floating slowly toward the sky that wasn't quite a sky. SpongeBob began to walk again. With each step, the sound of his house grew fainter, replaced by a low hum that seemed to come from everywhere. It wasn't music exactly, but it had a rhythm like breathing or waves. And with that sound came something else. Time. Not the sharp ticking of a clock, but the slow, stretching feeling of moments blending together, seconds melting into minutes. Minutes into hours, hours into dreams. Somewhere behind him, he thought he heard his alarm clock whispering in its sleep. Not ringing. Just sighing. He smiled. "You did your best, Clocky. We'll wake up when we're ready." The words floated away and became part of the hum. SpongeBob reached a ridge overlooking Bikini Bottom. The little town looked peaceful in the dim light, every window dark, every street still. Even the neon signs that usually buzzed so brightly were silent, their glow reduced to faint outlines. He could see the Krusty Krab quiet, without smoke rising from its chimney. The chum bucket across the street stood just as still. The sign above it flickered weakly once, then stopped. It felt like the whole world had fallen into the same dream as him. SpongeBob sat down at the top of the hill and let the silence sink in. It wasn't empty silence. It was full of memory, all the laughter, the sizzling, the sound of spatulas flipping, of friends talking and waves rushing. All of it had settled into this one calm breath. He looked up. Above him, the surface of the sea shimmered faintly, reflecting the faint glow of the moon from somewhere far above. He could almost imagine the surface world, a quiet night sky, a still town. Maybe someone up there asleep just like him. For a while, he didn't move. He didn't need to. Every few seconds, a bubble rose past him, carrying little glimmers of light inside. He thought of them as tiny dreams, some his, some belonging to others, all drifting toward the same peaceful surface. Maybe everyone's resting tonight, he whispered, his voice soft enough that even the water didn't echo it. A small jellyfish floated past, its tendrils barely moving. It brushed gently against SpongeBob's hand before drifting away again, leaving behind a faint sparkle. The world stayed still, but inside SpongeBob's chest, something glowed warmly, a small reminder that rest wasn't just about sleep. It was about letting the world be quiet for a while, without worrying about what came next. He thought of Mr. Krabs counting money even in dreams, of Patrick probably snoring softly in his rock, of Squidward pretending not to be at peace while secretly loving the silence. Everyone was somewhere doing their own kind of resting. The hum deepened, and SpongeBob felt his body becoming lighter, as if the dream itself were carrying him gently through the water. The line between awake and asleep blurred even more. For a brief second, he wondered if he was floating in his own room or in the sea outside. But it didn't matter. Both felt like home. And as he drifted deeper into the dream, he smiled the kind of smile that doesn't need to be seen, only felt. The sea turned a softer shade of blue, almost like the inside of a lullaby, and the clock, still sleeping back on the nightstand, glowed faintly in the dark, its hands unmoving, its heart beating in rhythm with SpongeBob's dreams. Tick, tock, nothing. Just peace. The sea had changed again. When SpongeBob opened his eyes, the water was no longer dark or blue. It was a faint golden hue, as though someone had poured sunlight into it and then walked away before morning noticed. He was still in Jellyfish Fields, but the flowers looked different now. They moved so slowly that they seemed to be frozen mid-bloom, and when they did sway, they left faint, glowing trails behind, like sleepy comets drifting through honey. A bubble floated past his face, large, clear, and pulsing softly. Inside it, he thought he saw something familiar. It was his kitchen, his frying pan, his little table with the chipped corner. He leaned closer. Inside the bubble, a tiny version of himself flipped a Krabby Patty that never seemed to land. The motion was looping, calm and endless, like the sea replaying a gentle memory. He smiled. "Oh, I remember that day," he whispered, his voice echoing like a dream inside a dream. "That's when I burned the first batch and still got a gold star." The tiny SpongeBob inside the bubble giggled, as if hearing him, and the bubble drifted higher until it became just another piece of light in the soft current above. He kept walking. Every step took him past more of those glowing bubbles, each holding a small piece of his life. In one he saw Patrick, half asleep under his rock, hugging a jar of peanut butter like a teddy bear. In another, Squidward was sitting by his window, painting a blue canvas that slowly turned into an ocean wave. Farther along, he saw Sandy floating in her dome, her helmet off, her fur shifting gently like the surface of a cloud. They were all dreaming, it seemed, all part of this shared quiet. And he was walking through the middle of it like strolling down a hallway of gentle memories. The waters shimmered softly around him, as if aware of his thoughts. He felt light, not just in body, but in mind, the kind of lightness that comes when you stop needing to hurry anywhere. Time didn't exist here, not really. He tried to count his breaths, but each one felt longer than the last. He tried to count the bubbles, but they multiplied when he blinked. Even the sound of his heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm of the sea. For a moment, SpongeBob wondered if this was what rest really meant, not just closing your eyes, but letting go of the need to wake up. He reached out and touched another bubble. This one showed his alarm clock sitting quietly on his bedside table, his little face tilted as if in guilt. The hands had stopped completely, pointing somewhere between midnight and dawn. SpongeBob chuckled softly. "It's okay," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You can rest too." And as he spoke, the clock inside the bubble actually smiled before the bubble drifted upward and popped, sending tiny sparkles through the water like falling stars. The hum around him deepened, turning into something warmer, thicker. It felt like the sound of a cozy blanket being pulled up, or like the hush before rain. He kept walking until he came to a hill of coral shaped like a crescent moon. He climbed to the top and sat down, curling his legs under him. From here he could see the entire dreamscape, the faint glow of the town, the drifting bubbles, the soft shimmer of the surface far above. The world below him looked asleep, and he was part of its heartbeat. The silence was so complete that even his thoughts began to slow down. No words, no worries, no what-ifs. Just the soft hum of being alive, quiet, floating. He lay back on the coral and watched the drifting lights overhead. They moved in slow spirals like the clock hands that escaped their circles and decided to wander freely through the ocean sky. For the first time in a long while, SpongeBob didn't think about what he had to do tomorrow. He didn't think about the grill waiting at the Krusty Krab, or the to-do list he sometimes wrote and forgot under his pillow. He thought about nothing, and that nothing was peaceful. He remembered Mr. Krabs once saying, "Time is money, boy." But here, time wasn't money. Time wasn't anything. It was simply a soft lullaby floating through the water, keeping everything safe in its rhythm. He laughed quietly. "Guess I'm rich, then." The sound of his laugh melted into the water, becoming another small ripple of light. Gary appeared then, or maybe the dream's version of Gary. The little snail floated beside him, glowing faintly blue, his shell glimmering like a distant planet. He didn't meow, didn't move, he just hovered there, watching SpongeBob with slow blinking eyes that said, "It's okay to rest." SpongeBob reached out and patted him softly. "Hey, buddy." Gary blinked once, and his light pulsed gently as if replying. They sat together, side by side, on the coral hill surrounded by bubbles that carried pieces of dreams to nowhere in particular. The water pulsed once more, soft, steady, endless. SpongeBob's eyes grew heavy again. He felt the weight of the world settle into something kind, something that didn't ask for effort. He whispered to himself, "Just 5 more minutes." The current whispered back, "Take all the time you need." Time had become a song, not one that played loud or clear, but one that lived quietly in the background, a rhythm beneath the waves, keeping the ocean breathing. SpongeBob felt it move through him like a heartbeat shared with the sea. Every rise of the current was an inhale, every fall an exhale. He was no longer sure where he ended and the water began. Above him, the drifting lights faded into something softer like candle flames under glass. They swayed with the motion of the tide, painting slow golden streaks across the water. Each flicker whispered a story too quiet to tell in words. He thought of his little home again, the pineapple house that waited somewhere far above, the window that faced the sea, the worn pillow that still held the shape of his head. He could almost feel it now, the texture of the sheets, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the quiet meow of Gary before dawn. But those things didn't call to him urgently. They waited patiently, like morning itself. Right now, the sea was his blanket. He turned on his side, curling slightly, feeling the gentle warmth of the coral beneath him. A small stream of bubbles rose from his mouth as he sighed, the sound so faint it could have been mistaken for a lullaby. Gary, still hovering beside him, gave a slow blink. The little snail's glow dimmed to match the rhythm of SpongeBob's breath. Two lights, one yellow, one blue, swaying gently in sync. The world around them deepened into a soft, dusky violet. Far in the distance, the outlines of jellyfish floated like drifting lanterns, their tentacles moving with the kind of patience only dreams know. No rush, no sound, just the pulse of the ocean, beating slow enough to fall asleep to. For a while, SpongeBob thought he could hear his alarm clock again, faint, distant, muffled as though trapped inside a bubble. But it wasn't ringing, it was just breathing. Like it, too, had fallen asleep beside him. He smiled, eyes half closed, letting the thought drift through his mind. "Guess we both needed a break," he murmured. The words didn't echo, they dissolved, turning into bubbles that floated upward until they joined the glimmering ceiling of light. He watched them go, watched how they danced, how they rose and disappeared into the slow swirl of the sea's hush. Every little movement carried peace. Even the rocks beneath him hummed faintly, a vibration he could feel through his back. It reminded him of the way his house sometimes shivered when the waves passed above, but here it was gentler, like a heartbeat he could lean against. For a moment he wondered if anyone in Bikini Bottom could sense it, this calm that reached so deep that even dreams had to move slowly. Maybe Patrick was stirring in his sleep right now, mumbling something about ice cream. Maybe Squidward was turning over in bed, sighing contentedly without knowing why. Maybe even Mr. Krabs in his treasure-filled room had stopped counting coins for once and was simply resting. The thought made SpongeBob smile again, not a wide grin, but a small, tired one, the kind that lingers before sleep. He blinked once, then again. The world blurred slightly, edges softening like watercolor running into water. The bubbles above began to drift downward now, as though gravity had decided to change its mind. They floated slowly around him, shimmering in circles, forming a dome of gentle light. It was like being inside a dream of the ocean itself. SpongeBob could feel his eyelids grow heavier. The current around him slowed until even the sand below seemed to stop moving. His thoughts quieted into one last whisper. Just a little longer. Gary's faint light pulsed once, as if agreeing. And then the sea did what it always does when something precious falls asleep. It guarded him. The current curved softly around his small form, wrapping him in stillness. The water above dimmed to deep indigo. The bubbles ceased their rise. All that remained was the rhythm, slow, soft, steady. Tick, tick, the tick. The forgotten clock, resting far above on the nightstand, gave one small sigh and then glowed faintly in its sleep. Its hands didn't move, but in its stillness, it kept perfect time with the SpongeBob's dreams. And so the night stretched on, quiet and endless. Bikini Bottom rested. The ocean breathed. And somewhere in that peaceful vastness, SpongeBob floated in the calm between heartbeats, timeless, safe, and utterly at peace. SpongeBob drifted through it as though walking through air, every step leaving behind a ripple that shimmered before fading. The world was soft colors dimmed into pastels, outlines barely holding shape. It felt like the ocean had exhaled once and forgotten to breathe back in. He recognized the familiar shapes before him. The Krusty Krab stood in the distance, not sharp and busy as it always was, but calm lanterns glowed in its windows, swinging slightly with the unseen current. The door creaked open and closed on its own, a rhythm so gentle it could have been mistaken for a heartbeat. No smell of sizzling Krabby Patties filled the air. No clatter of spatulas or orders shouted from behind the counter. Instead, a faint golden mist floated from the kitchen window, a memory of work, perhaps, left to glow quietly in the dark. SpongeBob walked closer. His feet touched the sand, but it didn't feel like sand. It felt like a thought, soft, warm, endless beneath him. He reached the front door and looked through the glass. Inside, the chairs were stacked neatly, and the cash register's light blinked lazily. Even the ketchup bottles seemed to rest, their reflections faintly breathing on the counter. For a moment, he thought he saw Mr. Krabs behind the counter, head bowed, eyes closed, a faint smile across his face. But as SpongeBob blinked, the shape turned into light again. No one here was awake, and yet everything felt alive. He stepped back and looked around. The streets of Bikini Bottom stretched out under a low, glowing mist. Signs floated slightly as if suspended by the slow tide. The Bikini Bottom bank shimmered like a dream of itself. Bargain Mart glowed quietly in the distance, shelves stacked perfectly still, every item resting as if the day had paused mid-breath. And then there were the jellyfish. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, drifting lazily through the streets. Their bells pulsed faintly with soft pink and blue light, casting patterns on the buildings like underwater constellations. They didn't sting or scatter, they simply were. Their slow movements gave the illusion that the whole city was breathing with them in, out, a shared rhythm of slumber. SpongeBob reached out to one, and it floated toward his hand. The jellyfish brushed against his palm, cool and weightless, leaving behind a trail of tiny sparkles that lingered before melting into the water. He laughed softly, not out loud, but in the quiet way dreams allow. His laughter echoed in small bubbles that shimmered upward like pearls. The sound didn't wake anything. It simply joined the silence. He began to walk again past the glowing buildings and softly turning coral fans. The world around him pulsed with the heartbeat of sleep, everything familiar yet distant, like looking through fog at something you once loved. In the window of the pineapple house, he saw a flicker of light. His home looked exactly the same, cozy and still. But when he peeked through the round window, he saw himself lying there, tucked beneath the blanket, motionless except for the gentle rise and fall of breathing. It was strange to watch himself sleep, stranger still to feel at peace with it. "Guess I really did forget to wake up," he whispered, smiling faintly. His voice didn't carry, it became part of the current. Gary was there too, curled beside the other SpongeBob, his shell faintly glowing like a nightlight. Every few seconds, Gary's antenna twitched, as if sensing something good in his dreams. SpongeBob reached out toward them both, his sleeping self and his quiet friend, but his hand passed through the window like mist. He didn't feel left out, though. He felt included in a different way, as though his dream self had stepped into a quieter layer of the world, one that could exist only when time had stopped. The sea outside hummed with color. Shades of lavender and teal brushed over the rooftops, settling softly into the corners of the streets. Even the seaweed leaned slower, swaying like it was tired of keeping up with time. Everywhere SpongeBob looked, there was calm, an infinite exhale that held the entire ocean in its stillness. He wandered deeper into it, following no path, no clock, no sound, only the hush of everything around him. It wasn't loneliness. It was peace. In the soft expanse of his dream, SpongeBob drifts like a bubble carried by a gentle tide. There's no up or down, no start or finish, only motion so slow it feels like stillness. The streets of Bikini Bottom unfold around him, familiar yet different. The ground glows faintly as if lit from beneath, the sand sparkling with sleepy reflections of the moon above the sea. He walks past his pineapple house, noticing how it seems larger, warmer. The windows breathe light like sighs, expanding and contracting in rhythm with his steps. Each step makes no sound, just a ripple of golden dust that disappears before it lands. The air carries the scent of Krabby Patties, soft and faint, as if the smell itself had fallen asleep. Ahead, the Krusty Krab stands peacefully under a dome of mist. The sign doesn't flicker or buzz. It simply glows, steady and calm. Lanterns hang from invisible threads, swaying as though they're dreaming too. Inside, the booths and tables are empty, but every chair faces the same way, toward the kitchen, where the grill hums faintly, as if remembering old laughter. SpongeBob steps closer and sees that the spatula is still turning itself over the grill, flipping invisible patties made of light. He giggles softly. "You never stop working, do you?" he says, but his voice sounds like it's underwater, muffled, kind, endless. The spatula doesn't answer, but it turns slower, until it too seems ready to rest. A jellyfish drifts through the open doorway, glowing pink and blue, trailing sleepy sparks. SpongeBob reaches out a hand, and it circles around his wrist like a bracelet of light. Then another joins, then two more. Soon the Krusty Krab is filled with quiet jellyfish, hovering as if they're keeping him company. He twirls in the middle of them, laughing silently, his movements lazy and weightless. The laughter feels like bubbles rising to the surface, soft and disappearing without sound. The jellyfish move in slow spirals around him, not to sting, not to race, but to dance. Their light pulses in time with his heartbeat, steady, gentle, calm. Outside, the world seems to have forgotten to move forward. The waves don't crash, they simply shimmer. The moon doesn't drift, it hums in place. Even the coral doesn't sway, as though it too is holding its breath in the hush of this night. SpongeBob steps out of the Krusty Krab, and the sand greets his feet with warmth. He looks up, there's no sign of the sun, but the sky isn't dark either. It's a soft teal, the color of half-sleep. The buildings around him breathe light through their windows, like hearts still beating beneath layers of calm. He walks toward Jellyfish Fields. The meadow greets him with silence. The usual buzzing and crackle of energy is gone. The jellyfish float low and slow, glowing like drifting candles on water. He sits down on the grass that feels softer than clouds, and Gary appears beside him. "Meow!" Gary's voice echoes like a memory stretched through water. SpongeBob smiles, reaching to pat him, feeling the warmth of his little shell. Gary's eyes blink slowly, reflecting the strange light of this dream, half the moon, half the sea. "Hey, buddy," SpongeBob whispers, though he's not sure if his lips actually move. "I think we forgot to wake up." Gary blinks again, unbothered. In this world, it doesn't seem to matter. There's no clock, no bell, no Mr. Krabs calling for the morning shift. Just quiet. Just the faint pulse of the sea's heartbeat. Somewhere in the distance, a bus light glows faintly through the fog, the one from Rock Bottom. But it doesn't look eerie now. It looks inviting, like a lantern guiding lost thoughts back home. SpongeBob watches it for a while, feeling an odd peace. Maybe even dreams have their own towns, places where the forgotten and the quiet come to rest. The bus light flickers once, softly, and fades. He lies back in the grass, hands behind his head. The stars above look like bubbles caught between layers of glass, faintly swaying. The sea hums beneath him, steady and low, like a lullaby too deep to be sung aloud. His eyes drift shut again inside the dream. A dream within a dream, wrapped in stillness. The kind that doesn't pull you in or push you away. The kind that just lets you float. And somewhere far away in the waking world, his alarm clock sits silent. The gears unmoving, the hands frozen in kindness. The night holds him safely still, whispering, "Not yet, little sponge. Rest a while longer." SpongeBob drifts deeper into the dream, where even thoughts seem to dissolve like salt in water. There is no hurry, no direction, only the quiet wonder of seeing his world without sound or edges. He finds himself floating through the streets again, though now Bikini Bottom feels weightless. The buildings aren't anchored. They sway gently as though breathing in their sleep. The windows shimmer with light that comes from nowhere and everywhere at once. Even the signs above each shop flicker with soft luminescence. Krusty Krab, Bargain Mart, Mrs. Puff's boating school. But none of them feel real. They are memories of places delicate and transparent. He glides past Squidward's house next. It looks almost the same, but the sharp edges of the stone head are rounded, softened by dream logic. From inside, there's no sound of clarinet practice, only a low, soothing hum, the kind that could belong to the sea itself. SpongeBob pauses, smiling faintly. He wants to knock to tell his friend about the stillness, but his hand passes through the door like mist. That's when he realizes he's not really walking anymore. He's floating, moving wherever his mind wanders. The ground doesn't need to hold him. The world itself seems to carry him forward. He drifts toward the chum bucket. Normally it's dark, cold, and a little lonely, but tonight it glows a soft violet. Inside he sees Plankton, not scheming or shouting, but sitting quietly at a small table, sipping from a mug of tea much larger than himself. Karen flickers on the screen nearby, displaying a calm ocean scene instead of data. The light from her monitor paints gentle ripples across the walls. SpongeBob tilts his head, smiling at the sight. In this dream, even Plankton looks peaceful. There's no rivalry, no noise, no plans, just rests. He moves on, carried by the invisible tide of slumber. The sea around him begins to change color. The teal fades into deep indigo, and schools of glowing fish appear, circling him like constellations. Their fins glimmer in the distance, and every time one turns, a soft pulse of light ripples outward. SpongeBob reaches out, and the glow dances across his fingertips, leaving behind little trails like tiny stars. He starts to hum without meaning to. The tune doesn't belong to any song he knows. It's something his heart invents. A slow, steady rhythm that sounds like the ocean breathing. The melody weaves through the water, and the fish respond by moving in time with it. The dream becomes a music box of light and movement. Gary appears again, gliding effortlessly beside him. His shell reflects the glowing currents, making him look like a small, drifting planet. SpongeBob laughs softly, a whisper caught between bubbles. "Looks like we're in the Milky Way of the sea, huh, Gary?" "Meow." Gary's reply echoes gently, carrying the same calm tone the world now breathes with. They pass over jellyfish fields again, but now it stretches endlessly. The meadow has become a sky, soft pink and blue, dotted with luminous jellyfish that drift like clouds. Each one hums faintly, releasing threads of golden light that float upward. SpongeBob realizes they aren't jellyfish anymore. They're dreams. The dreams of everyone in Bikini Bottom, rising and blending together like a sea of sleeping wishes. He sees Patrick's dream first, a giant ice cream cone that never melts, glowing like a beacon. Then Sandy's, a quiet laboratory with flowers blooming around her inventions. Even Squidward's, His clarinet notes drift upward, each one forming a star before fading. Every dream adds to the sky, creating a soft chorus of colors. SpongeBob stops to watch. His eyes glimmer, half awake and full of peace. "So this is what happens when everyone rests," he murmurs. "All our dreams, keeping the sea warm." A gentle current flows through, wrapping around him and Gary like a blanket. It doesn't push or pull, it simply invites. SpongeBob lets himself sink into it, his body turning weightless again. He looks up, and the dream sky ripples once more. The stars begin to drift downward now, slowly falling like snowflakes made of light. Each one lands softly on his hands, his face, his chest. They don't melt, they pulse, tiny reminders that time doesn't matter here. He breathes out, and the stars respond with a shimmer. Everything is breathing with him now, the sea, the lights, the world. In, out, slow, slower, until it feels like even breathing isn't necessary anymore. In the distance, the bus light from Rock Bottom flickers again, dim and kind. It hums once like a lullaby, then fades to darkness. Gary curls up beside him, and SpongeBob closes his eyes once more. He can't tell if he's dreaming deeper or waking up inside the dream, but it doesn't matter. The world is safe still and full of warmth. The clock in his room remains silent far above the waves, but if you listen closely enough, you might hear another rhythm instead, the slow, steady beat of peace, pulsing through the ocean floor. The dream begins to shift again, not with sharp edges or sudden sounds, but like the tide turning softly beneath the moon. SpongeBob feels the motion before he sees it, the quiet drift of change, the way a dream deepens just before it fades. He's lying now, though he doesn't remember lying down. The seafloor beneath him feels like velvet sand, gently rising and falling with his breaths. Above, the glowing jellyfish dreams drift slower, their colors dimming to soft lavender and silver. The entire ocean seems to exhale. Gary rests near his side, his shell pulsing faintly with light, as if keeping time with SpongeBob's heartbeat. Every so often, a bubble escapes SpongeBob's mouth, slow, round, and delicate. They float upward and burst silently, adding their rhythm to the stillness. Somewhere in the distance, he hears laughter faint, echoing, the way memories sound underwater. He sits up slowly. The light bends as he moves, and the laughter grows clearer. It's familiar. He looks toward the Krusty Krab again, but it's different now. The restaurant's shape is softer, wider, glowing from within like a lantern in a storm. The doors open on their own, and SpongeBob drifts closer, guided by curiosity more than control. Inside, everything is warm, not bright, not loud, just comfortably glowing, like the inside of a seashell lit from within. The tables are filled with friends Patrick, Sandy, Squidward, even Mr. Krabs. None of them are moving, not in the normal sense. They're caught in mid-laughter, smiles lingering like starlight. It isn't frozen, it's preserved, like a memory paused perfectly in the best part of a moment. SpongeBob walks among them, feeling no sadness, only tenderness. "I must be dreaming your dreams too," he whispers softly, watching Patrick's eyes shimmer with invisible joy. Behind the counter, the fryers don't sizzle instead. They hum gently, a low, steady sound like waves brushing against coral. On the wall, the clock is melted and stretched, its hands drifting in slow circles. It's not broken, it just doesn't need to keep time here. SpongeBob looks around and realizes there's no door leading outside anymore. The restaurant has become its own world, floating somewhere between deep sea and deep sleep. He doesn't feel trapped. If anything, it feels like home at its most peaceful. No rushes, no mistakes, no alarms, just the comfort of knowing everything is as it should be. He finds a booth near the window, slides in, and rests his arms on the table. Outside, the sea moves like a living painting. The jellyfish rise and fall in rhythm, and even the sand seems to shimmer to the beat of his slowing heart. Gary hops onto the seat beside him and curls up again. SpongeBob strokes his shell absently. "Do you ever wish time would just stop, Gary?" he murmurs. "Meow." Gary's voice echoes gently, vibrating through the table and out into the water. The whole dream seems to answer. Time does stop, not forever, but long enough to let him feel stillness, long enough to remember that he doesn't always have to move, to do, to be something. Sometimes resting is enough. He leans back, letting his head touch the cool glass of the window. The view beyond has changed again. Now he can see the ocean floor stretching endlessly, glowing faintly in blue. In the distance, the outline of his pineapple home appears faint, blurred, but there. The window light flickers inside it, a reminder of where his body sleeps while his spirit drifts here. He smiles. "Guess I left the light on," he whispers. For a moment, everything pauses completely. The sound, the movement, even the water itself seems to hold its breath. Then, one by one, the dream begins to fold softly, neatly, like closing the pages of a book. The buildings fade first, then the jellyfish, then the slow glow of the Krusty Krab. Only SpongeBob and Gary remain, floating in a vast field of soft blue. Above them, the surface shimmers faintly, though it's far, far away. It doesn't feel like a place to go, more like a promise. The light flickers through the water in gentle waves, golden at the edges like the start of morning. SpongeBob closes his eyes again, knowing he's still dreaming, but sensing that somewhere beyond, dawn might already be touching the world he left behind. He imagines the clock on his nightstand, still silent, still resting. He imagines it smiling in its own little way, content to forget time for just one night. The water hums one last time low, steady like a lullaby sung by the ocean itself. "Good night, world," SpongeBob whispers. "Let's sleep a little longer." And with that, the dream exhales completely, folding, fading, and finally settling into perfect quiet. No alarms, no rush, only peace beneath the waves. SpongeBob finds himself standing at the familiar doorway of the Krusty Krab's kitchen, but something's different tonight. There's no sizzle, no chatter, no rush of orders. The door swings gently on its hinges, moving with the current, as if breathing. The lights above glow faintly golden, not the usual bright white that fills every corner. It's a humbler glow, like candlelight through seawater, warm, quiet, and steady. SpongeBob steps inside. His shoes make the smallest sound against the tile floor, not the squeak of workday mornings, but a slow, soft pat like bubbles rising from a coral cave. The air carries the faint smell of sea salt and bread, the memory of crabby patties long since made and shared. His eyes move toward the grill, his beloved grill, and for a moment he expects to see smoke curling or hear the rhythm of the spatula tapping against metal. But tonight the grill sleeps too. Its surface is cold, perfectly still, and SpongeBob can see his reflection rippling faintly in it, eyes half-lidded, peaceful. He smiles. "Guess you're tired too, huh?" he whispers, running a hand gently over the smooth steel. The metal hums back, not a voice, not a word, just a vibration that seems to echo in his chest. Beside the grill sits the spatula, his old friend, the one that's flipped 1,000 perfect patties. It's resting exactly where he left it, gleaming faintly in the golden light. SpongeBob lifts it slowly, turning it in his hands. The reflection of the light dances across its surface, shimmering like a small sunrise. He doesn't feel like cooking tonight. Instead, he just stands there, spatula in hand, listening. Drip, drip. Somewhere a faucet lets a single drop of water fall every few seconds. The sound bounces gently through the room, blending with the faint electric hum of the lamps and the deep, steady heartbeat of the sea outside. SpongeBob closes his eyes. The sounds weave together into something like music, not the kind played on instruments, but the kind made of small, ordinary moments that happen only when the world goes quiet enough to notice. He leans against the counter, resting the spatula beside him, and lets his breathing fall into rhythm with the water's drip. Each breath slows, each thought drifts further away. On the shelves nearby, jars of pickles and sauces shimmer faintly in the dim light, their glass reflecting tiny waves that move lazily across the ceiling. The patterns look like rippling stars caught in jars, gently shifting with each passing current. For a long moment, SpongeBob just watches the light move. He remembers all the mornings that began here, the rush of orders, the laughter of customers, Squidward's sleepy sighs. But now, in this still dream, he realizes how beautiful the quiet can be. The spatula rests again on the counter, and SpongeBob hums softly. Not his usual working tune, but something slower, more like a lullaby. His voice carries softly through the kitchen, mingling with the low hum of the fridge. The sound feels alive, wrapping around the room like warm water. He moves toward the window above the sink. The glass is misted over, soft and blue, but beyond it, he can see faint movement, the gentle sway of seaweed, the shimmer of moonlight rippling through deep water. It's like looking through a dream within a dream. SpongeBob presses his palm lightly to the window. The cool glass hums faintly, like it's breathing too. Somewhere out there, a jellyfish drifts past, glowing faintly pink, before vanishing into the shadows. The moment feels endless, like time forgot to count for a while. The kitchen, the ocean, even the air seems to move slower here. He whispers quietly, as if talking to the sea itself. I never realized how loud silence could feel, until it started to sound like home. A faint sound answers a soft vibration from the water pipes, echoing deep within the walls. It's not words, but it feels like understanding. SpongeBob smiles again and returns to the center of the kitchen. He picks up a towel, folds it neatly, and places it beside the sink. Every motion is slow, deliberate, graceful, as though each gesture has meaning. He moves toward the freezer, opens it just a little, and the faint chill brushes his face. Inside, rows of ingredients sleep in perfect stillness. He doesn't take in anything but just watches, feeling a strange peace in seeing everything at rest. The whole room feels like it's holding its breath. The silence isn't empty, it's full, rich, glowing with the memory of life. And as SpongeBob stands there, surrounded by the quiet pulse of his own world, he begins to feel the weight of sleep pressing deeper, not heavy, not tiring, just calm. He places his hands on the counter, closes his eyes once more, and listens. Drip, hum, breathe. The ocean outside sighs again, slow and rhythmic, as though the whole sea has fallen asleep. The golden light seems to grow softer with every passing moment, settling over the tables and counters like a thin blanket of peace. SpongeBob drifts slowly through the kitchen, touching things not to use them, but to feel their quiet. The jars, the pans, the tiny cracks in the tile, everything hums with a soft kind of memory. He can almost hear the echoes of laughter from another day, folded carefully into the air. He opens one of the drawers, the one where he keeps his favorite ladle. It glints faintly in the warm light, polished smooth from years of use. He lifts it, holds it up to the ceiling glow, and it catches the thread of the ocean's reflection, silver and trembling. For a moment, he pretends he can scoop a piece of that light, just like soup. He laughs softly, the sound barely leaving his throat, and the ladle dips gently back into the drawer. On the wall, a small clock ticks faintly. It's not keeping time, right? The hands move in slow motion, maybe once every few seconds, as if even it has decided to rest tonight. SpongeBob watches it for a while, feeling no hurry at all. He whispers, "It's okay. Take a break." The clock face glows faintly as though agreeing. He moves toward the back counter where an old stack of plates sits untouched. One by one he begins to rearrange them, not to clean, but to listen. Each small clink echoes softly through the room, blending with the rhythm of dripping water and distant waves. The sound feels like a lullaby made of porcelain. He lets one plate rest in his palm, running his fingers along its rim. It's warm from the air around it, faintly humming like everything else tonight. The kitchen feels alive in its stillness, not asleep, but resting like a creature that breathes slowly and dreams deeply. From the far side of the room, a single bubble escapes from the sink's drain. It drifts upward, slow and lazy, reflecting tiny fragments of light as it floats past the ceiling lamps. SpongeBob watches it rise, turn, and finally disappear into the shadows above. He smiles softly. "Good night, little bubble." Then he turns toward the order window, the one that leads out to the dining area. The blinds are half drawn, and faint shadows of chairs move beyond it, swaying gently as if stirred by the current. SpongeBob pushes the flap open, just enough to peek through. The restaurant beyond is empty, quiet, serene. The tables look like islands floating in a golden sea, and the condiment bottles gleam faintly like tiny lanterns. He half expects to hear Squidward's bored sigh or Mr. Crab's distant laughter, but instead there's only the sound of the ocean brushing against the outer walls. He leans on the window frame, resting his chin in his hand. "Maybe they're dreaming, too," he says softly. "Maybe the whole world's taking one long nap." Behind him, a faint vibration stirs. The refrigerator hums, rising slightly in pitch before settling again like a deep breath. The warmth in the room wobbles a little, flickering between golden and pale blue, as if the dream itself were shifting gently in its sleep. SpongeBob turns back toward the grill. The reflection in its surface looks softer now, blurrier, as though underwater light has begun to mix with morning. The grill's edge gleams faintly, a memory of sunrise caught inside steel. He walks closer and places both hands on the metal once more, closing his eyes. The hum beneath his palms is slow, deep, and steady. It feels like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. For a long moment, there's no thought, no sound, no motion, just stillness. Then something faint and lovely. The soft clink of a spatula shifting slightly on its own. SpongeBob opens his eyes, startled but calm. It hasn't fallen. It's simply moved a little, the handle resting more comfortably against the counter's edge, as if settling into its own sleep. He smiles again. "Good night, buddy." The lamps above dim slightly, the golden hue deepening into honey-colored shadow. The walls seem to breathe. The bubbles outside drift slower, and even the hum of the fridge sounds like a lullaby now. SpongeBob pulls up one of the small stools from the side, the one he sometimes uses when waiting for a late order. It's smooth, worn down from years of being pushed across the floor. He sets it near the counter and sits, his back straight at first, then slowly relaxing as his eyes soften. He looks around once more, every shelf, every pot, every tool that's shared his laughter and his work. They all seem different now, as if he's seeing them not as things to be used, but as quiet companions that have always listened. He breathes deeply. The air tastes faintly of salt and something sweet, maybe the leftover warmth of old crabby patties. Or maybe it's just the flavor of dreams. Maybe this is what rest really is, he murmurs to himself. Not sleep, just letting everything be still. The spatula glimmers faintly on the counter, the clock ticks without urgency, and a faint swirl of bubbles spins slowly through the open window. The kitchen glows softer still, half dream, half memory, and SpongeBob, eyes half-lidded, listens as the world beyond the walls hums low and steady the ocean's own goodnight song. The air inside the Krusty Krab feels sacred in its stillness. Even the smell, that familiar blend of fried oil, salt, and faint sweetness from the bun seems to hang softer now, as though it too has gone to sleep. SpongeBob runs his hand along the counter, tracing invisible shapes in the thin layer of condensation that's formed overnight. His fingertips squeak lightly against the metal, and the sound feels comforting proof that something still breathes quietly here. He walks over to the window above the sink. Beyond it, the water sways like liquid moonlight. There's no traffic, no noise from jellyfish zipping by, no echo of laughter or clinking plates. Only the slow, graceful pulse of the ocean's heart. He presses his hand to the glass and imagines that maybe, just maybe, the whole sea has chosen to rest tonight, taking one long, peaceful breath before the next sunrise. He turns back toward the grill. It looks so different when it's not sizzling, when no steam curls upward, when there's no chatter of orders shouted from behind the counter. It's strange but beautiful, too. For once, the kitchen isn't a place of hurry. It's not about perfection or performance. It's just being, a space allowed to simply exist, surrounded by silence and soft light. SpongeBob kneels down and opens the small cupboard where he keeps his cleaning supplies. Inside, everything is neatly arranged: bottles of polish, extra sponges, folded cloths. He smiles to himself. Even his dream has order. Even in this timeless quiet, his habits of care linger. He picks up one sponge, round and yellow, just like him, and gives it a gentle squeeze. A faint squeak echoes through the room like a sleepy giggle. He sets it beside the sink and begins to wipe the counter in small, slow circles. Not because it's dirty, but because it's something he knows, something that feels grounding. Each motion seems to smooth out his thoughts, like erasing ripples from the surface of water. The light above flickers gently, and he hums again that same tune he always does when he's content. When he finishes, he takes a seat on one of the stools near the register. The chair creaks softly under him. He looks out over the empty dining area, the clean tables, the neatly aligned ketchup bottles, the napkins folded just right. And he realizes something simple, something small but profound. Even when no one's here, the Krusty Krab still feels alive. He can almost hear faint laughter echoing from the corners, memories of customers, of Mr. Krabs shouting money, and Squidward's sighs blending with the smell of freshly fried patties. The echoes dance faintly like ghosts of happiness, still drifting through the air. SpongeBob leans back, closing his eyes. He imagines what the first sunrise might look like when it finally returns, the way the light will pierce through the windows, the way it will sparkle on the grill, and the way he'll greet it, spatula in hand, ready to cook again. But not yet. Not now. Now is for rest. Now is for stillness. He lets out a long sigh, and the sound seems to blend into the rhythm of the ocean, one slow wave rolling after another. The Krusty Krab feels less like a restaurant and more like a cradle, rocking gently between the tides. Somewhere in the distance, a jellyfish floats past, glowing faintly pink, leaving a shimmer in its wake. The light passes through the window and paints a soft stripe across SpongeBob's cheek. He doesn't move. He just smiles. Everything from the hum of the fridge to the rhythm of the sea becomes a lullaby now. The walls seem to breathe with him. The air feels warm and safe. In that small, quiet kitchen at the bottom of the sea, SpongeBob feels the rarest thing of all. The calm of doing absolutely nothing and knowing that it's enough. The hush of the kitchen deepens, almost like the ocean itself has taken a breath and held it. SpongeBob sits still, hands folded on his lap, eyes half open, as if he's caught between waking and dreaming. The golden glow from the small ceiling light hums like a distant lullaby, warm and low. He feels it soaking into his skin, that gentle, endless peace that comes when the world has stopped asking for anything. On the counter beside him, a single bubble rises from a forgotten cup of dishwater. It floats upward, catching glimmers of light in its surface reflections of tables, stools, salt shakers, and the faint outline of SpongeBob's own sleepy smile. It hovers for a moment, swaying in the quiet current of the room, before softly popping. That sound, almost too soft to notice, feels like a heartbeat in the stillness. SpongeBob rests his chin in his hands, eyelids heavy. He whispers into the empty room, "You did good today." He's not sure if he's talking to himself, the grill, or the walls, maybe to all of them. Every part of this place holds a little piece of his care, every polished surface, every wiped-down stool, every sparkle of glass in the front window. They've all worked beside him, day after day, through laughter and rush, through spills and smiles. And now they rest together, co-workers, in quiet. He slides down from the stool and pads softly toward the door. His square shoes make faint squeaks against the tiled floor, like tiny waves brushing the sand. As he reaches the door, he doesn't open it right away. He turns and looks back one last time. The Krusty Krab sits in a gentle stillness, all its familiar shapes softened by the glow. The spatula lies where he left it. The sign on the wall hangs straight. Nothing out of place, everything at peace. He takes a slow breath, the kind that fills him all the way to his corners. Outside, through the window, he can see the faint shimmer of jellyfish gliding by, their trails of light curling and fading like dreams do when mornings close. But there's no morning yet, just a long stretch of soft blue time. The kind that has no end, no urgency, just being. When he finally steps out, the gentle chime of the door sounds like a whisper. The water outside feels cooler, heavier, a velvet quiet wrapping around him. The restaurant behind him fades softly into the distance as he drifts along the sandy road toward home. Each step stirs little clouds of dust that rise, shimmer, and vanish like thoughts dissolving into calm. He doesn't rush. He doesn't need to. Somewhere deep down, even in his dream, he knows that time has loosened its grip tonight. No morning bells, no alarms, just a world allowed to breathe slowly for once. When he finally reaches his pineapple house, the lights are dim and the curtains ripple gently from the current outside. Gary sleeps curled in a soft shell of bubbles, his eyes moving faintly under closed lids, dreaming snail dreams. SpongeBob watches him for a moment, a fond smile growing across his face. Then he tiptoes through the living room, past the worn armchair, and into his bedroom, where the blanket still holds the faint shape of where he'd been. He climbs back into bed, pulling the blanket up to his chin. His pillow feels cool and soft, just the way he likes it. He can still smell a faint trace of the crusty crab, the comfort of his daily life mixed with the salty sweetness of the sea. It's home in every sense. The ticking of his alarm clock is slow now, steady but gentle. It no longer races toward morning. It just keeps time like a heartbeat, matching his breath. SpongeBob watches its little hands glow faintly into the dark and murmurs, "Tomorrow can wait." Outside, the ocean hums low, an endless cradle song. Inside, the air grows still, warm and tender. The kitchen, his dream, fades completely now, replaced by soft darkness and the rhythm of rest. Somewhere deep beneath the waves, a single light flickers inside the crusty crab. It's the nightlight over the grill glowing faintly, holding the dream for him, keeping everything safe until the morning returns. SpongeBob drifts deeper into the current of sleep, his smile lingering even as he lets go. The ocean wraps him in its arms, and for one perfect moment, everything, every grain of sand, every shell, every quiet breath of the sea, seems to sigh together, rest a little longer. The night in Bikini Bottom holds its breath, a lull in the waves, a hush beneath the coral skyline. Inside the pineapple house, everything is soft. The curtains drift with the gentle current. The bubbles from the snail bowl rise slowly, and the shadows sway like seaweed in rhythm with a silent melody. Gary opens his eyes, the faintest gleam reflecting in them like tiny pearls. He doesn't know what woke him. Maybe the whisper of a dream. Maybe the hush of a house too still. He blinks once, twice, his gaze floating toward the bed where SpongeBob sleeps, a gentle rise and fall beneath the blanket. The little sponge's face is peaceful, the corners of his mouth curled in a quiet smile that still carries the glow of his dream. Gary lets out a tiny, drawn-out meow, soft enough not to wake him. It's a sound filled with care, not curiosity, not hunger, just the comfort of presence. He glides slowly from his bowl, his trail glimmering faintly in the dim light. Each movement is unhurried, fluid, and calm, as though time itself is matching his pace. The clock beside the bed sits still, its hands unmoving, its face faintly glowing blue. Gary tilts his head, studying it with slow, blinking eyes. It isn't broken, it's resting. Even time, it seems, has decided to take a nap tonight. The small snail hums softly, a sound that feels like the sea humming back. He circles once near SpongeBob's bed, then glides up the leg of the nightstand. From there he peers over the edge, his little feelers waving slowly in the dark. Below him, SpongeBob turns slightly, sighing in his sleep, pulling the blanket closer. Gary's gaze softens. He watches him the way the moon watches the sea, not to wake it, just to make sure it's safe. His small shell glows faintly, reflecting the light of the room's lone lamp, a soft, golden shimmer against the stillness. Outside, a few drifting jellyfish pass by the window, their glow faint and slow, painting stripes of light that ripple across the walls. Gary settles again, easing himself down beside the bed. He curls into a small spiral, his shell touching the edge of SpongeBob's blanket. The warmth from the bed seeps into him, and the rhythm of SpongeBob's gentle breathing becomes a lullaby. He closes his eyes, but he doesn't sleep deeply, just enough to float on the edge of dreaming. Snails don't need much to feel peace. Just a quiet room, the sound of a friend breathing nearby, and a world that has finally stopped moving. Even the ocean outside seems to respect the stillness. The current slows, the sand lies untouched, and somewhere far off, the faint hum of the reef pulses like a heartbeat, one that belongs to both of them. In that stillness, Gary feels something tender, a wordless love that doesn't need to be spoken. The kind that lingers between breaths, between heartbeats, between the rise and fall of a sleeping friend's chest. The night deepens, but inside the pineapple house, it feels timeless, like a bubble caught between tides. Gary remains near SpongeBob's bedside, his small shell glimmering in the dim blue light. The silence isn't empty, it breathes, it hums. It feels full of small, living things quietly being themselves. A tiny bubble escapes from SpongeBob's nose and floats up, glistening like a drifting pearl. Gary watches it rise until it bumps gently against the ceiling and bursts into silence. The snail tilts his head, his eyes slowly following where it disappeared. For a moment, he imagines that the bubble carried part of SpongeBob's dream with it, a soft, silly dream filled with jellyfish, laughter, and clouds made of seafoam. The faint sound of water trickles somewhere, a pipe settling, a current brushing past the coral walls. Each sound feels familiar, comforting. Gary listens closely, like a guardian of quiet moments. Every soft echo has meaning here, a sign that their little world is still at peace. He looks back to the alarm clock. Its glow is dimmer now, a sleepy blue circle in the dark. One hand has moved just slightly, as though remembering it should, but not rushing to catch up. Gary blinks slowly. There's no rush. The morning will wait. A soft shimmer passes over the window. Outside, a jellyfish drifts by, its tentacles glowing in rhythm, pulsing softly. Then another and another. Soon the entire window becomes a moving canvas of pale pink and gold light. The jellyfish float like lanterns, each one carrying a flicker of dreamlight across the sea. Gary inches closer to the glass, drawn by the gentle glow. The world outside looks endless layers of coral shadows and blue mist, small creatures floating in calm rhythm. There's no movement that disturbs the peace, no noise that breaks it, just a quiet ocean breathing in and out. For a moment, Gary sees his reflection faintly in the glass. Two small eyes, curious and calm, looking out into forever. He blinks once, and in that slow gesture, he seems to understand something wordless. Stillness is not the absence of life, it's life at rest. He turns back to SpongeBob, whose blanket has slipped slightly. Gary inches closer, and with the gentlest nudge, tugs the corner back over him. The sponge stirs faintly, but doesn't wake. His smile deepens instead, and he sighs softly, a sound like the sea's whisper against the shore. Gary settles again, pressing close to the warmth of the bed. A faint blue bubble drifts from his shell, rising slowly and breaking near the lamp. The glow shifts slightly, casting softer, warmer tones across the room, golden coral, sea-green shadows, pale lavender ripples. The house feels alive in that moment, not busy or bright, but gently breathing. Even the furniture seems to exhale, the chairs, the little picture frames, the jellyfish lamp by the window. Everything feels suspended between dream and waking, resting together in the same rhythm. Gary's eyes grow heavier, though he's still awake. He doesn't want to sleep, not yet. Watching feels important, like his tiny role in keeping this quiet world safe. So he hums again, that same low, soft sound that only the sea can hear. If sound could glow, his hum would look like ripples of light spreading slowly through the dark, touching the walls, the bed, the clock, the small, sleepy sponge under his blanket. Gary's hum fades, but the warmth remains. The house is perfectly still again, not lonely, just wrapped in gentle silence. Outside, the jellyfish drift farther away, their glow dimming into soft blue fog. Gary closes his eyes halfway. He isn't sleeping, he's listening to the steady pulse of calm that fills every corner of their world. Tonight, the sea isn't a place of waves and motion. It's a cradle, and its quiet dreamers. The night flows onward, but in SpongeBob's home, time has lost its edges. It drifts like a slow current, soft and circular, the kind of stillness that carries a heartbeat if you listen closely enough. Gary's eyes open slightly. He senses something in the quiet, not danger, not noise, just a subtle shift, as though the ocean itself had turned over in its sleep. The air feels a little warmer, the colors a little softer. Shadows on the wall sway gently like kelp in the tide. He looks at SpongeBob. The sponge is still dreaming, but his dreams have begun to ripple outward. A soft golden hue glows faintly from his body like sunlight remembered. The glow pulses in waves, lighting up the room in slow breaths, gold, then blue, then pale white. Each pulse makes the coral furniture shimmer faintly. The curtains sway as though touched by unseen currents. Gary tilts his head, mesmerized. He inches forward, curious, and soon realizes the light isn't just coming from SpongeBob. Tiny bubbles are drifting out from under his blanket, floating toward the ceiling. Each bubble holds an image inside, fleeting, gentle, and dreamlike. In one, SpongeBob flips a Krabby Patty and laughs as jellyfish float past the Krusty Krab windows. In another, he's chasing a bubble across a field of coral flowers that sway in a current that doesn't exist. In another, he's standing beneath a soft golden sky holding a spatula like a lighthouse lamp. The bubbles rise and fade one by one, their images melting into the dim blue light. Gary watches in silence. He doesn't understand the dreams, but he feels their warmth. The bubbles pop soundlessly, and every time they vanish, a little sparkle of light drifts down, catching in his shell like starlight. He lets out a small hum, almost instinctively, and the lights seem to answer, flickering in rhythm with the sound. For a moment, it feels as though SpongeBob and Gary are sharing a single, slow breath, their dreams and waking moments flowing together. A faint current moves through the room now. The curtains lift gently. The shells on the shelf tinkle like tiny chimes. Gary looks toward the window and sees faint trails of glowing plankton drifting past, weaving golden ribbons through the dark. They move slowly, gracefully, as if drawn toward the soft light pulsing from the little house. Outside, Bikini Bottom sleeps under a blanket of sea fog. Even the coral towers, the little houses in the streets, look gentler, dream-soaked. A snail somewhere far away lets out a tiny call, answered by another, and then another, a quiet chorus echoing across the ocean floor. It's as if the sea itself is humming a lullaby for all who rest beneath it. Inside, the clock finally stirs. The little hands twitch once, as though remembering what they were meant to do, but then, as if reconsidering, they slow down again. One soft tick, then another, each fainter than before. The clock light flickers dimly, reflecting in Gary's eyes. He blinks slowly, his gaze moving back to SpongeBob. The glow around him fades a little, settling into a soft, golden halo. His breathing deepens, slow and even. Gary senses that his friend is sinking deeper into the safe, heavy kind of sleep, where dreams turn into whispers and warmth. He feels a gentle gratitude ripple through him, though he doesn't have words for it. He just knows that in this quiet house, in this endless sea, there's peace, pure and whole. Gary turns his gaze to the photo on the wall, a framed picture of SpongeBob and Patrick, arms around each other, smiling wide. The photo catches a bit of the dream light, glowing faintly in the dimness. It looks almost alive, as if their laughter had lingered there suspended in time, echoing in stillness. Gary moves a little closer to the base of SpongeBob's bed. He curls his shell against the soft sponge fabric of the floor mat and watches the bubbles rise slower and slower. Each one smaller, softer, lighter until finally they stop. The glow fades to the gentle silver of moonlight through water. Gary feels his body relax, the cool of the floor beneath him, the faint hum of the sea around. Everything feels safe. Everything feels whole. His eyelids lower halfway again. He can still hear SpongeBob breathing, steady and peaceful. He listens, letting that rhythm anchor him like a lullaby only he and the sea can hear. In that moment, time itself feels asleep. No clocks, no alarms, no morning. Just the slow pulse of rest shared between a sponge, a snail, and the sea. Outside, the ocean begins to shift not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that only a creature like Gary can feel. The deep currents roll a little warmer, and the distant hum of the tide carries a faint shimmer of light. Morning is still far away, but its promise drifts through the sea like a sigh. Inside the pineapple house, nothing moves except the gentle flicker of SpongeBob's dreams. The bubbles that once rose toward the ceiling now linger in still air, faint motes of light spinning slowly before fading away. The clock sits perfectly still, its hands frozen between seconds, as if afraid to disturb the calm that has filled the room. Gary blinks once, his eyes catching the dim silver that seeps in from the window. The world outside looks softer now, the shapes of coral and sand blurred into watercolor shadows. He lets out a small breath, almost a purr, and shifts closer to SpongeBob's bed. Each movement feels unhurried, like he's gliding through a dream himself. SpongeBob turns slightly, still fast asleep, a peaceful smile caught on his face. There's a tiny wrinkle near his cheek where the blanket presses against his skin and his arms are tucked beneath his chin. He looks like a child wrapped in the comfort of a world that's decided to wait for him. Gary tilts his head, watching him for a while. He remembers nights like this before the ones when SpongeBob stayed up late after work, exhausted but cheerful, telling Gary about every jellyfish he met and every Krabby Patty he flipped. He remembers the sound of laughter echoing in the kitchen, the faint trail of soap bubbles drifting through the air. Now that same joy hums quietly beneath the silence, folded into the still moment, like a memory that glows from within. A single trail of bubbles rises near the bed's slow, tiny spheres catching the moonlight. They shimmer blue, then pink, then clear again before disappearing into the dim ceiling. Each one feels like a small dream leaving for the surface, carrying pieces of warmth from this quiet room. Gary watches until the last bubble fades. Then he looks toward the window again, the faintest movement, almost invisible, where the light begins to turn softer, less blue and more pale gold. The ocean's morning breath touches the edges of the house. A current flows by, brushing the window gently, and the seafloor stirs as if waking from its own dream. Inside, the clock finally twitches again. One soft tick, then silence, then another tick. Time has remembered itself carefully, respectfully, so as not to break the calm too quickly. Gary turns toward it, blinking, but makes no sound. The clock light glows faintly now, not as an alarm, not as a call to wake, but like a candle reminding the world that morning exists somewhere. The hum of the refrigerator joins in, then the faint creak of the house as water shifts around its walls. All these tiny sounds, familiar, kind, grounding, begin to return, one by one, like gentle footsteps on soft sand. SpongeBob stirs once more, his hand twitching slightly. A bubble of air slipping from his lips with a quiet pop. Gary lets out a slow, warm purr. He inches forward and rests near the edge of the bed, curling against the fabric, his shell reflecting the first flicker of dawn. He doesn't wake SpongeBob, not yet. The world can wait a little longer. Through the window, the deep blue fades to lavender. The outlines of coral rise clearer like shadows remembered by light. And somewhere in the far distance, a muffled sound, the Krusty Krab sign flickering awake, the faint clang of a distant bell. Morning is coming, but it comes softly, like a whisper traveling through water. SpongeBob sighs in his sleep, turning his face toward the window. For a moment the light touches his cheek, a thin beam slicing through the waves, painting his yellow skin gold. It's so gentle, so weightless, that even the ocean seems to hesitate before brightening more. Gary blinks, eyes half closed, as if memorizing this peaceful glow. He knows soon SpongeBob will wake. The clock will ring again, and the rhythms of the day will return: laughter, bubbles, the chatter of friends, the smell of breakfast. But for now, this stillness belongs only to them. The alarm clock's light flickers once, brighter this time, then settles into a steady glow. It doesn't ring, not yet. Maybe it remembers the night it forgot to do its job. Maybe it's decided that silence can be sacred, too. Gary rests his head against the shell, letting his last waking thoughts dissolve. He listens to the hush, the slow drift of time, the gentle pulse of the sea beyond the walls, the quiet breathing of a friend he loves. He feels the calm wash through him, deep and full, as if the ocean itself is telling him, "Sleep a little longer. There's no hurry here." The house drifts again into near silence. Outside, the first true rays of sunlight pierce the upper water gold, breaking through indigo. They fall over the roof of SpongeBob's pineapple, shimmer over the sandy yard, and settle softly on the window pane. Inside, that golden light dances across SpongeBob's blanket and Gary's shell, turning the whole room into a slow sunrise beneath the sea. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of awareness, the alarm clock finally stirs to life. Its gears click faintly, the second hand nudges forward, but it doesn't ring. Not this morning. It only glows gently, keeping watch, content to wait a little longer before waking the sea. For now, SpongeBob sleeps perfectly still, perfectly at peace, and the ocean, kind and endless, hums him softly back into the dream he never meant to have. The night had lingered longer than usual, as if the sea itself had decided to sleep in. For hours the current slowed, carrying only soft ribbons of moonlight through coral and sand. Every grain shimmered like it was dreaming. Far above, the sun began its patient descent through the blue, a soft golden drip spreading warmth into the cold depths. It was slow, almost hesitant, as though the light feared waking what had found such deep rest. Inside SpongeBob's pineapple house, the walls glowed faintly, just enough to reveal outlines: the round clock, the chair, the empty snail dish, the way the curtains swayed like breathing. The whole room was still caught between worlds, not quite night, not quite morning. SpongeBob stirred. His fingers twitched against the sheets. The pillow cradled him like the soft belly of a cloud. He didn't wake suddenly. He floated toward waking, the way a bubble rises toward the surface, slow and certain. Gary's shell shimmered in the half-light. He blinked. sleep still heavy in his eyes, watching the sunlight crawl along the floorboards. It made tiny gold ripples in the puddle where SpongeBob had dropped water the night before. Even that small reflection looked alive, as though it sighed too. There was no sound, not yet. No clang of spatula. No sizzle of grill. No order up or I'm ready. The usual chaos of morning had been traded for something soft and wordless. SpongeBob breathed in deeply, and even his breath sounded like part of the ocean. The sunlight touched his face. He blinked once, twice, a lazy smile forming before his mind caught up. He turned his head, expecting the clock to chime, but it stood frozen, its little hands resting as if they too had given up keeping time. For the first time in as long as he could remember, SpongeBob felt the joy of slowness, the beauty of being late, of letting the day begin on its own terms. The kind of morning that doesn't need an alarm, only a feeling. He stretched his arms out, the blanket slipping down like a slow wave. The air was cool and thick with calm. Somewhere in the distance, a whale sang low and long, its voice rolling through the sea like a hymn. And SpongeBob, eyes half open, smiled again. The day could wait. The light began to settle, filling the pineapple home with a golden hush. It painted over the clock, the shelves, even the tiny bubble trails that had floated up from Gary's bowl overnight. Each surface shimmered with soft edges like a dream that hadn't completely left. SpongeBob sat up, his square silhouette outlined against the sleepy light. His eyes blinked slow, adjusting not just to brightness, but to the quiet, that strange, weightless silence that only follows perfect rest. He turned toward Gary, who was still nestled against the floor rug, his shell gleaming faintly like a nightlight. "Morning, Gare Bear," SpongeBob whispered, his voice still fogged with sleep. Gary didn't move at first. He just made a tiny meow sound, soft like a sigh, and tucked himself a little deeper into his spiral shell. SpongeBob chuckled. "Yeah, me too." He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, feeling the cool floor beneath his feet. It was like touching still water, refreshing, grounding. Usually he'd spring up, already thinking about the Krusty Krab, about patties and customers and laughter. But not today. Today felt slower, sacred somehow. The house creaked softly, the sound of wood expanding with warmth. Bubbles rose from a corner and drifted lazily toward the ceiling, glinting gold in the sunlight. He followed them with his eyes until they disappeared one by one. Every movement, every breath, every glance carried its own rhythm, unhurried and natural. SpongeBob realized that even without clocks, the world still knew how to move. The sun would rise, the sea would hum, and he could simply be. He smiled, wide and calm, resting his head on his knees. "Maybe just 5 more minutes," he whispered to no one, and the sea in its gentle way agreed. Outside, the reef began to stir. Coral branches opened like sleepy fingers reaching for warmth. Tiny fish wove between them, their scales catching the new light. Jellyfish floated past SpongeBob's window, pulsing softly like lanterns on slow heartbeat rhythm. The ocean floor glowed in pastel blues and honey golds, the kind of colors that didn't demand attention but invited it quietly. SpongeBob leaned closer to the window. The glass was cool against his cheek. He could see faint silhouettes of his neighbor Squidward still asleep, head tilted back in his chair. Patrick sprawled across a rock, drooling with blissful abandon. He giggled softly. The sound barely echoed, but filled the room anyway, like sunlight filling the seashell. And then he noticed something small, the clock. It ticked again, one hesitant click, then another, slowly, shyly, as though it too had remembered what it was meant to do. But SpongeBob didn't mind its lateness. He smiled at it fondly, a little proud even. "You did your best," he said softly, patting it as if it were a sleepy friend. "We all deserve a break sometimes." The words hung in the still air, simple and true. He stood up and walked to the kitchen, not to rush breakfast, but to let the ritual unfold. Every sound was music now, and the soft clink of a cup, and the gentle slosh of water, the hum of bubbles rising from his kettle. Even the way the sea light shimmered across his table felt like part of a song. He poured a cup of warm coral tea and took the first sip, feeling it spread through him like sunlight itself. Outside, the ocean yawned, and for a long, peaceful moment, SpongeBob forgot the idea of time altogether. The day had finally arrived, but it came gently, not in a rush of noise, but in layers of color and calm. The town of Bikini Bottom awoke in soft motion, curtains fluttering open, bubbles rising in slow spirals, doors creaking as morning stretched through every corner. SpongeBob stepped outside his house carrying his tea. The sand was cool beneath his feet, the kind of cool that promised warmth later. He stood there, breathing in the quiet, the scent of salt, the faint sweetness of kelp flowers. Above him, the sunlight shimmered through the waves like ribbons of gold dust. He took one slow sip, then another. It didn't matter that he was late. It didn't matter that the grill would wait a little longer, or that the spatula still rested. For once, SpongeBob wasn't chasing the day, he was part of it. Flowing, breathing, belonging. He looked toward the horizon and whispered, "Good morning, ocean." And somewhere in the depths, the ocean whispered back a deep, endless hum that sounded a lot like love. The clock inside ticked on, finally caught up, but SpongeBob didn't hear it. Because peace, when it finally finds you, doesn't need to make a sound. The ocean had forgotten what rush felt like. Somewhere above the waves, the sun continued its gentle climb, spilling threads of pale gold into the deep blue below. Light traveled slowly here, not like lightning or fire, but like breath. It seeped into every crevice, brushed against every coral edge, and found its way, finally, into the little pineapple house at the heart of Bikini Bottom. Inside, SpongeBob sat at his kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea made from dried sea kelp leaves and coral petals. The scent filled the room, sweet and faintly earthy, blending with the salt that always lingered in the air. He cupped his hands around the mug, letting its warmth seep into him. The clock on the wall ticked softly now, steady, awake, but not urgent. It didn't command him. It merely existed, like everything else in this calm morning that had no demands. He took a slow sip, eyes half-lidded, watching the sunlight move across the floor. The patterns it made looked like waves, soft ripples that changed shape with every passing minute. Gary was nearby, gliding in quiet circles, leaving a delicate trail that shimmered faintly. Occasionally, the snail made a tiny, contented sound, something between a sigh and a hum. SpongeBob smiled at that. It was the kind of smile that required no reason, a quiet thank you to the moment itself. He realized something strange. He hadn't thought once about work yet. Not about the Krusty Krab, not about the grill, not even about his spatula. Normally, by this hour, he would be racing through his morning routine, apron flying, laughter echoing through the house as he declared himself ready. But this morning, he was already ready in a different way. The kind of ready that means peaceful, full, whole. He looked out the window and saw the soft silhouettes of jellyfish moving through the water. They pulsed slowly, like they were breathing with the sea. Beyond them, the sand dunes glimmered faintly in the sunlight. Even the world outside seemed in no hurry to begin. SpongeBob took another sip of tea and leaned back in his chair. His eyelids felt heavy, not with sleepiness, but with peace. Everything around him seemed to hum the same tune a song made of small moments and slow breaths. He thought for a moment that maybe this is what mornings are supposed to feel like. Not loud, not rushed, but soft, like a gentle tide washing over the start of a day. And so he let it be just that. When he finally decided to step outside, SpongeBob didn't rush to the door. He moved the way seaweed sways, patient, light, unbothered by time. The sand was cool beneath his square feet. The morning current brushed gently against his spongy skin, bringing with it the scent of coral blooms and kelp gardens waking from sleep. Bikini Bottom was unusually still. The usual chatter and clatter of early hours hadn't begun yet. Patrick's rock home was quiet, not even the faint snores that sometimes rolled like waves. Squidward's windows were half open, and for once, SpongeBob heard no sighs or clarinet scales. He smiled softly. Maybe even Squidward was having a slow morning. The water around the town shimmered with lazy ribbons of light. A few seahorses drifted by, their tails looping slowly around strands of seaweed as they nibbled at soft algae. The coral bell near the chum bucket gave a gentle ding as a current passed through it. Not loud, not sharp, just a sleepy chime that folded back into the sea. SpongeBob walked toward Jellyfish Fields, his steps light and rhythmic. Each one left a faint print in the sand before the ocean swirled gently over it. He could feel the world moving at a different pace, the kind of pace that wasn't measured in seconds or hours, but in sensations. The pulse of water, the warmth of light, the slow unfolding of awareness. When he reached the edge of the field, he stopped. Dozens of jellyfish floated before him, their translucent bodies catching the dawn light. They moved together, slow and perfect, like a living constellation beneath the waves. SpongeBob stood quietly, watching them drift. He didn't reach for his net. He didn't shout. He didn't even wave. He just stood there, breathing with them, one rise, one fall. Time once again forgot itself. He closed his eyes and felt the world pulse around him. Every heartbeat of the sea matched his own. Every sway of water mirrored his breath. When he finally opened his eyes again, the light had changed softer, golden pink now, like the color of warmth itself. He whispered, "Good morning," to no one in particular. And it felt like the ocean whispered back. The path back home took longer than usual, not because it was far, but because SpongeBob noticed everything. A small school of baby fish hiding inside a coral tunnel. A drifting shell turning slowly in the current. The faint shimmer of plankton glowing in shaded corners. All of it had been there every day, yet today it all felt new. He stopped to pick up a pebble smooth, shaped by years of water and motion. He rolled it between his fingers, feeling the coolness of it, the history in its weight. He thought about how even something as small as this pebble had its own story, its own rhythm. The ocean had taught him many things: to laugh, to work hard, to chase joy, but today it was teaching him something gentler: how to exist without needing to hurry. When he passed Squidward's house again, he saw the clarinet resting on the windowsill, catching the sunlight. No sound came from it, but SpongeBob imagined the notes, slow, drifting ones, the kind that fill quiet rooms and make them softer. Maybe, he whispered, today's a day for slow songs. He continued on, humming a little tune of his own. It wasn't perfect, but it was calm and full of heart. Each note seemed to float out and join the sea. When he reached his pineapple again, the door creaked open, as if it had been waiting for him. The house felt warmer now, the sunlight stronger, yet still gentle enough to glow without glare. Gary lifted his head slightly when SpongeBob entered, eyes blinking slow and curious. "Hey, buddy," SpongeBob said softly. "You ready for breakfast?" Gary gave a faint meow, the kind of sleepy yes that made SpongeBob giggle. He moved to the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast, not with the usual whirlwind of energy, but with care. He cracked an egg into a pan, listening to the soft sizzle as it met the warmth. He toasted a slice of sea bread, spread coral jam across it, and placed it neatly beside Gary's bowl. Every motion felt deliberate. Every small act became part of something sacred, a ritual of calm. The aroma filled the air slowly, curling upward and mixing with the faint scent of tea. SpongeBob hummed again. Not a work tune, not a jingle, something quieter, wordless. Outside, a beam of light broke through the water, striking the kitchen window and painting a soft halo around him. For a moment, the whole world felt perfectly aligned. After breakfast, SpongeBob sat near the window again, holding his cup in both hands. He watched bubbles rise past the glass and disappear into the light. He could hear distant noises now, faint movement in town, the soft stirrings of life returning. But none of it felt intrusive. It was like the world was gently remembering how to begin again. He thought about the alarm clock that had never rung, about how it had given him this morning this unplanned, unexpected gift of slowness. He turned his head toward it, smiling. "Maybe I'll forget to set you more often," he whispered. The clock ticked back in steady rhythm, as if chuckling. SpongeBob leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward the window once more. The sea outside looked endless, a soft tapestry of color and motion. Somewhere above, light rippled down in wide golden ribbons, each one alive with gentle shimmer. He thought of how mornings like this might come again, or maybe not, but that didn't matter. The feeling, the calm, would stay inside him now. And maybe tomorrow, even if the alarm did ring, he would still move a little slower. Still breathe deeper. Still look at the jellyfish floating past and remember this stillness. The kind that doesn't fade when the world begins to spin again. He closed his eyes, breathing in one last deep sigh. Outside, the reef glowed brighter. Patrick's laughter echoed somewhere far away. Squidward's clarinet played a few uncertain notes, sleepy and sweet. The crusty crab lights flickered on in the distance. The day had begun, but SpongeBob didn't rush toward it. He simply sat there smiling, letting the morning arrive fully before he joined it. And in that quiet golden space between stillness and motion, SpongeBob felt something beautiful. The peace that comes not from stopping time, but from learning that you don't have to chase it. Good night.